to have our candidates come up and talk and share their opinions and their to run for office and win. So we have Steve, Justin, Nico, Katie. Let's see, and we got John, Aaron, who hopefully will. Really excited to have everybody show up. Thanks a lot, everybody. Great evening. So this will start out with Steve.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Steve LaFrame. I'm your Republican. To be honest, I have lots of opinions, but I will share some points. So, and it's going to rain. People always ask why you're running. I will tell you that it's changed actually a little bit since the time I really got involved. Not meaning that my principles changed, but my heart's changed a little bit in the way that I see now more how serious it's just more and more serious every day. It's never going away. What really got me involved in this is I felt that God told me I should do this. I had a strong conviction that this community has supported me, my business, my family, our 5 children, my wife. I've got an ability to talk, and I have an ability to use my mind for good things, and those are gifts that God gave me, and I thought I should do this. So after a lot of prayer and my wife arguing with me and also agreeing with me, we decided to do this. Property taxes are a big part of this. What's going on with property taxes is really an uneven thing. We saw a mass distribution of wealth to the state on our property tax bills behalf, on the backs of the taxpayer, the property owners, all property owners, and I'm going to step back. But I guess my point is, I think we have it upside down, backwards, and every which way but loose, and I'm not real happy with it. Ultimately, if you look at all the stuff, where we might have saved money here, we paid more money here. So did we really save anything? It's odd. I believe in helping people. I do love people. Our DPHHS budget is giant. It's the biggest in the land. It's the biggest one we have in the state. Yet, we still seem to be having problems. School choice is very important to me as well. There's a lot of homeschool families out there. They've got some really good success stories. A lot of families that like to send their kids to other places besides school, and I think they need to get behind that. And I've always felt that you should go your kids. So that's always been. And to tell you the truth, I feel like we've lost so much industry in our state. Just having to talk a few minutes ago, fellow man of we have a great industry, but it can't last forever. It needs some other industry. And for the Treasure State, mining is only 4%. And logging, we only have 3%. Our infrastructure to support all the industry is dilapidated. Well, it's important to stay away from it. It's time to bring that back. I hate to say cut the red tape, but that's really what we have to do. We've got to come together and figure out a way to get this. I did a lot of research, smelters and different things. I'd like to bring my pragmatic business legislative session. I'd like to end this. I will tell you this. Win or lose, I'm not going to leave. Because once you unseat, you can't unsee the things you see, you can't unhear the things you hear. You need people involved in every part of this. Central committee, media, which is a great place for us to get not just as candidates, that you might have. Who's next? Who do we pick on next? John Looney. Good evening. Thank you guys for all coming out. My name is John Looney. I'm running for House District 81. I know it's always the same thing. It's a stump speech. We always get up here and we say the same things, but I grew up on the Highline. I grew up in Bath, Montana. I grew up on the reservation and right next to Glacier Park. Joined the military, left for several years, got out of the military in Washington, Fort Lewis, met my wife, ended up in Yakima, Washington, and decided that we were, number one, it's Washington, got to get out of there. Number two, family should have to call, or you should be far away enough for family that they have to call before they come over instead of just coming home and everybody's there. So we moved back to Montana. Why am I running? I'm running because, and this is the second time I've run, but I have been up in the Capitol for the last 4 sessions, passing bills, trying to pass other bills, and I'm just at the point where you get into a committee room or in front of a committee and you're trying to pass a bill or you're trying to explain something and you have 30 seconds or you have a minute or you have 2 minutes to talk about a subject. I could fill a committee room with 300 years of experience from a business, whatever that bill is, and explain why the bill that we're passing is good or explain why the bill they're trying to pass is bad. And at the end of everybody's testimony, their 30 seconds or their 1 minute, legislators never ask questions. There's a whole room of experience, and the people that are supposed to be representing you, it seems like they just don't care. They've been up there for so long, they've been entrenched in the political system that they don't care about what that room full of people that took time out of their busy days, took time out of their business to come up and explain to the legislature why or why not that bill should pass, and you don't have the common decency to ask some questions or figure out why they're in the room testifying the way they are. I am tired of testifying in front of the table. And I'm tired of people going up to the legislature and being in the same position I am. Going in front of a committee and explaining why or why not a bill should pass. So I am going to take my seat at the table so that stops happening. The legislature needs to listen to the people that elected us or elected them and hopefully elects us into that position. Because we're there to represent you. We're not there to represent ourselves or the lobbyists that are telling us what should be done or what shouldn't be done. It's that room full of people that are there testifying on your behalf, explaining what the voters want in Montana. So I'm tired of not having a voice or not feeling like the legislature is actually listening or using common sense. I can look across the crowd, I can look across everybody that's out here, and each of you have a business or have something in your life that is important to you. And if I don't ask you what that is, then I am derelict in my duty. So I am not going to go up to the legislature and be derelict in my responsibility to the citizens that elect you. I need to know what you want, and I am there to represent you. We sat in a room yesterday with the power company, with Northwest Energy, and it was interesting. There was candidates from both sides of the aisle there, and the questions were very different that were being asked. The questions from the left were, why don't we put a moratorium or a pause on what you're trying to do, which was the data centers or the LNLs, the large grabbers of energy. And the CEO of Northwest Energy says, why would you put a moratorium on
large users, not only does it stop, if that's your thing, you want to stop and you don't like and you haven't done the research on data centers, but what about the next Boeing or the next large company that comes in? You've also stopped them from coming into Montana. You have to listen and do the research and use some common sense with the laws that are going to be passed. We have to put people up in the legislature that are going to represent the people and represent the people that, or the citizens that, and the people that you want, and what you want to happen up there. It doesn't matter what I want. What I want to know is that people are listening to you and asking the questions and figuring out why you elected me up there and why is this bill good or why is this bill not good. Common sense. Ask some questions. Learn. Not everybody, I'm not an expert in everything. I'm obviously an expert in bail bonds. I own a bail bond company. Ask me about bail bonds, ask me about the judiciary. I've got that down. I don't know a thing about data centers except what I've researched and what I've asked people and learned. That is what those people are up there in those committee rooms trying to tell you and trying to explain to you. If you don't ask questions and if you don't represent the people that are there telling you yay or nay, then why are you there? So that's my little stump speech for the night. I would appreciate you voting for me, and I don't know who's next. Chico. Chico's next.
Friends, my name is Chico Wilson. The first question that usually asked to me is, what kind of name is that? Where are you from? So I'm from the islands. My parents were from Fiji, my father, and my mom is from Hawaii. So I have a Japanese middle name, which is Michiko. So when people always say, Costa or whatever, I've learned a little bit of Spanish to help with that. So it's a strange name, but I have found with all my sons that it's very good with keeping deer off the road, so I do appreciate that. And scaring other people. Anyways, I'm running for House District 7 now, and that's going to be starting at the northern part of Lincoln, coming down into northern Jefferson County and the far west part. And my why of where I first started running is I came up through the working gals from the Lewis and Clark Republican Women and Patriots, just through doing work to get conservatism back where it should be, because we're the people. So when I found out and realized that somebody did not run into that district, I called Karen one more time, 4 to 5, because there wasn't anybody in there. So I am a retired person from working business. I still have a business, but working restaurants. So it's very important to be fiscally responsible and to not, pretty much the things that we learned in Canada. Don't take things that are yours, don't lie, cheat, those type of things, and bring them to the capital. I struggle with the common sense part because that's not very common anymore, and it means so many different things. But I have a creative mind, and I have a strong will, and a strong work ethic. And we've been learning so many different things and studying different things. It seems like every rock that you say all these things. So what I was really thankful for is over my years of doing business in support system. People so we need to protect the business, but we also need to protect the workers. I'm also really, really big on safety. Community safety is very important to me. And so there's a whole lot of things that protect private property rights, and also not becoming sanctuary, because we cannot sanctuary. I also have a heart for first responders and their families, not just the responders, because I have a loved one who just recently had to deal with a suicide and how it affects the entire. So in my nurturing, we had a test earlier with candidates, and I tested very high in the nurturing aspect. But prior to my recovery, I was always a, so hopefully I'm I'm transforming into my. But I'm there to protect our communities in a very important way, and that is from the womb to the tomb. Honestly, there's a lot of families need to be protected, loved ones need to be protected, businesses need to be protected, our state needs to be protected, freedom needs to be protected. And so each of us have different bends, and different things that are dear to us. And my aim is just to be honest, to work hard, to find the information that we need to do in order to keep us free. Commissioner Rolfe.
Pleasure to be here tonight and get a chance to talk. I'm technically nonpartisan. Your county nonpartisan. All offices are nonpartisan. But I spent too much time being a Republican. And it's a little bit hard to pretend. Uh, I spent most of my life in the private sector. When I came back from the Army, decided to run for the legislature. Was elected to the legislature. And in the legislature, I was part of a only Republican. We called those of us who were opposing all the red light district, because we pushed the red light all the time. And so I was part of the red light district. After that, I got involved in the family business. Didn't have time to run for legislature again. But I stayed active in Republican politics. Did work for many years for delegates for Ronald Reagan. One of those people who went around trying to help him along. I want to tell you a little bit about why I'm running for re-election. I was elected for the first time to the County Commission in
I'm Justin Cleveland, House District 17. Of course, everybody that's speaking is in the 80s, 70s, 80s district, and I'm the oddball in 17. That's up here. North Valley, Birdseye, Teton, it's all rural, North Valley, but I live in Fairfield, which is in Teton County, and the district goes to the Ponderay. Just shy of 3 million acres to cover. Today I left home, my wife and I, and started hanging signs again for the general, and figured we better make every trip count. Knew I had to come down to this, so we hung a bunch of signs today trying to get this area covered again. But work in that area, there's a lot of with the North Valley, Birdseye, and the Lincoln, Wolf Creek, Augusta, Fairfield, Shoto, Penroy. Living in Teton County, I know a lot of those people, but coming down here into the North Valley and Birdseye, I've had a lot of help and met a lot of good people through the campaign. It's been interesting how many people know people from where I'm from, and I might know people they know, and it's been good that, and like Chico said it with the group here, with LC4. It's been a great group. When I ran 4 years ago in House District 17. She and my wife, who's kind of Lone Rangered it, but now with the group here in Lewis, Clark County, it's been really beneficial to me, having that help, having that support, be able to bounce ideas off of people. We don't all know the experts in it in a lot of things, but we can help one another in different areas, and it's been great that way. So getting involved in running for a House district, wasn't getting answers from my sitting representative at that time, and basically was told it's too difficult to understand. Well, I think it was too difficult to explain why they were voting the way they were voting, but so I ran against him because I was challenged. He'd pay my $15 fee to file if I would run and take the job, so I did. I'm still waiting on my $15, but that was 4 years ago, so it's probably 30 now. But anyway, just those things. Took a constitutional class and realized I wasn't doing my part. I wasn't involved, and you guys have a great central committee here, and of course in Teton County we're trying to get that going again, and it's been a great time to come down and meet with the Central Committee and then the Young Republicans and their support, and their wanting to be involved has been good. But I guess my big thing when I got involved was looking at the government budget since in the last 20 years going up 230%. Yeah, we have a balanced budget, but doesn't mean we can't cut some spending. Shouldn't be just increasing the budget because we're taking in more revenue. We don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. As I've talked to people with infrastructure, with roads, water, sewer, things like that, bridges, those things are things that the state should do, protection of our rights, and police, fire. But there's so many things we spend money that because we've got that money, we want to spend that money on something else. But just being able to curb that appetite for spending. I think Tom mentioned it to Dave Ramsey. It's time to start maybe eating a little less, right? And using the money wisely, being fiscally responsible. You've got property taxes, as John said. We were sitting in that meeting yesterday. Northwestern Energy is taxed at a rate of 14% property tax. So you can see that on your bill, that property, that shift got put over there. Yours went down on your house, but your utilities and municipalities all went up, and so it's paying the same amount, just go into different pockets, and you don't see it all at once. But I think we need to get a true property tax reform done and be looking at a lot of water rights things and private property. And of course, I was talking with Steve with seems like social media is really going after the mismanagement of our forests finally. And hopefully we can get something done there. As I tout that, the same as Steve with our mining and our timber harvest. We got a lot of resources, but we're not using them. And to be able to get those things up and running and maybe give some property tax relief and taxes on the citizens, relieve them that way. We're taking getting that revenue from our state and federal grounds to use them for what they were meant to be used for. So that's why I'm running in House District 17, and I know there's a few voters here. John, there are some people that aren't mine. And I thank them for all their help and their votes and support. So any questions, I would try to answer them. I'm not going to say I'm going to answer them, but I try to.
We have 3 minutes. Why don't you do a jig?
I don't jig. I don't zig, I don't zag. Man, a few words. Okay.
What's another high legislative priority for you haven't talked about yet?
I got asked that question last night at a meeting. I said, I don't have a burning thing I'm going to take. And of course, the guy brought me a burning issue that it goes with education as well. With where's all that money go? We see a lot of administrative costs, I think, in the schools, and those things need to be looked at because I think they're coming with wanting more and more and more, but we need to start looking where's all the money going. And there was a great article written down in Billings about roofing a school leaking, yet they built a $14 million football field. So I know a lot of that gets raised, but can't they raise that kind of money to do other things too? And I was talking to a gal in the North Valley today that out there at Canyon Creek, they didn't have the money to get something, and they had a community fundraiser because it wasn't in the budget, the way. And Tom can probably attest to this with counties and schools and cities. Their budgets are kind of siloed, you got this money for transportation and this for maintenance and this for this. And if you don't spend it, you might lose it. So you got to spend it, not wisely, just spend it so we know we're going to get it back. But to be able to loosen some of them constraints, maybe, that they can shift that money easier to be able to use it where they need to use it instead of just being lumped in. It's awful quiet in here. Okay, who's next? It must be Clinton, Katie. Katie Fruits.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad so many of you were able to make it today. My name is Katie Fruits. I am the candidate for House District 80. And I figured, I know a lot of you have already heard my story and what sort of things brought me to where I'm at today running for office, which that in itself is still kind of a crazy concept. Every once in a while I'll be driving in to work on campaign stuff and it'll just hit me and I'll go, is my life even real? Why did I decide to do this? Because some days it is not fun. It is not necessarily fun to get out there in 80-degree weather with thick smoke. You're breathing in the smoke, you've got a headache, you're sweating, and go door to door, to door, to door, to door, on and on, talking to voters. But that's what matters. And it's talking to voters like that is what ultimately made me realize that somebody had to get involved, somebody had to step up, get off the bench and onto the battlefield and do something different. Before I ran for office, I worked in constituent services for the governor's office. And what that means is anytime anyone had a problem or an issue with the governor or with government in general or any government agency or really any problem, because people don't have a great understanding of separation of powers, they would end up talking to me on the phone. And I heard everything from, I hate the president, to my Medicare is messed up, my Medicaid is messed up, I can't get help from the VA, all sorts of things. And of course there were people who would call in concerned about certain policy issues as well. And those were the nice ones because sometimes we could actually do something about that. But I also had people who would go, can you have the governor write a bill? And then I would have to give a full civics class, get them in touch with their representative. But all that to say, because that is my background and because my background is literally being the person to talk to the constituents, that's why I think I would make a good legislator. Because one thing that I hear more so than any other issue when I am out talking to people now, talking to people on my own accord, representing myself rather than the governor, I hear lots of people concerned about housing affordability. That's a big one in my district. I hear people concerned about property taxes, about inflation, all sorts of things. A lot of fiscal matters. But what I hear even more than that is not always what people are ready to say, but you can tell. So many people have lost hope. And so when I start talking and they tell me their concern is about housing affordability and property taxes, and I tell them what my thoughts to help those things are, they go, "That's great and all, Katie," and roll their eyes at me and say, "But nothing will ever change. You seem like a great person, but nothing will ever change." And that sort of mentality absolutely breaks my heart. Because you know what the one thing that we can do that will ensure that it doesn't change is if we don't ever try. And like I said earlier, it's time to get off the bench and onto the battlefield. We've spent too much time sitting on our thumbs, complaining about the world around us. It's time for people to do something, which is why when John Looney came into the governor's office one day and said, "Katie, you're 18 years old now. You can run. Are you going to?" I laughed at him and I said, "There's no way, you're crazy." But people kept asking because we needed somebody willing to step up and stand for truth and for goodness and for justice, because it's hard to find people willing to do that. So much so that little old me at 18 years old was left to file for office against a Democrat incumbent who later dropped out of the race, leaving that same, at that point, 18-year-old completely unopposed running for the legislature. And for a few weeks, that's how it was. I was unopposed until other Democrats came and jumped into my race. And so I think if you look at the world around us and you say, nothing's ever going to change, that's the sort of mentality that is contributing to the state of things, because we do need people to step up and we need to spend time building up those people. I always say, I think a good solid 50% of your job as a leader is actually to build up other people to take your place. That's a quick little good plug there to say that I also support term limits. I've already signed the congressional pledge, or the congressional term limits pledge, so we're good there. But I truly think that a good portion of your job as a leader should be training up somebody to replace you, because it does no good for your community, for your family, for one person to sit there until they die and then to not pass along any of the knowledge that they have gained. Ronald Reagan once said that freedom is never more than a generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children through the bloodstream. It must be fought for and protected and then handed on for them to do the same. And then he continues on to say, or else we'll spend our sunset years telling our kids and our grandkids what it was like when America was free. That's the sort of thing that I am hoping to avoid. We need young people to be willing to step up and take on a challenge like this. It's hard. Like I said, 80-degree weather, smoke, it's not always easy, but it's worth it. It's a mission that's worth it. And I will say, another question I get asked a lot is, Katie, what are you going to do if you lose? And I can pretty confidently say, well, two things. First of all, if I lose, I'm not going anywhere, right? I fully intend to run again. I already I've talked to people about what it would look like for me to work for Republican leadership for the House. So I'm not going anywhere, win or lose. But the other way to look at things is I'm in this race by the grace of God and because He has called me to it. I told you earlier that I didn't want to run. I thought John Looney was crazy when he asked me to. And it was only after a few things had kind of shaken up in my life, one of those things was Charlie Kirk's murder, that I realized if nobody else was going to step up, I had to. Because again, you can't complain about the state of things and not do anything about it. And I also realized that the initial reason that I had said that I wouldn't run, it wasn't actually because I wasn't capable of it. I was far from the truth. The real reason I didn't want to was because of fear. And every other little excuse I had made was just trying to justify a fear of doing things like this, standing in front of all of you and talking about the need for people to step up. And I said, eventually one day, I'm a Christian. And the Bible is filled with stories of people who stepped up to be bold. Can you imagine if, let's take Esther, for example, if when she walked into the king, when she walked over to the king and she said, oh, actually, if I ask him to save my people now, he might have me killed. And she walked away. That would have been catastrophic. And, there's a verse that says she knows that even if she didn't, the Lord would rise up deliverance from elsewhere. But, I was not prepared to wait for deliverance to rise up from somewhere else. I was going to do something about it. And again, you can look at stories like, I love the book of Daniel. Daniel is so good. It's full of stories where the governing authorities say, you don't talk about your faith. We don't want your values, We want you to eat this way. We don't want you to pray. And here are the consequences of you doing those things. And Daniel, what does he do? He doesn't say, oh, yeah, I'm just going to stop praying. I'm just going to eat the food you give me. Not at all. He stands up in boldness, and the Lord is with him. And so I can say confidently that the Lord is with me because I'm not in this race because I choose to be. I'm in this race because God has called me to it, and I'm ready to serve my people. I would love to take any questions you have. Yeah, Brenton.
What's your position on education, and in particular how that ties into the message that we're seen to be lacking hope nowadays? What would you like to say on that?
Yeah, I really like talking about education and education policy because I think it is an area that I can have a lot of influence in. I get talking to a lot of legislators about education, and that some of them are doing great things, but their perspective is very different than mine, because you're going to be hard-pressed to find anyone in the legislature who is as close to being a student. Because let's be honest, I'm not that far out of being in high school, and so I feel like the perspective I bring to education is fresh, it's modern, it's relevant, and I think I can be a really beneficial voice in the education discussion because, again, we all bring different things to the table. It's just a matter of using everybody's valuable perspectives as a citizen legislature to ultimately produce the best outcome. Now, some of the specific things I would love to talk on is we talk a lot about school choice, and I have a somewhat nuanced stance on school choice, as many of you know. I wholeheartedly believe in parental rights in education, and I think parental rights needs to be our top priority. So as that relates to school choice, I think that parents should have the freedom to send their child to whatever school or homeschool them if that is what they believe will work best for them and their family, even if that comes with, maybe some financial sacrifice. I think that is a freedom that is worth sacrificing for. Another interesting thing that plays into my view on education is I'm running against a local public school teacher. My opponent is a biology teacher at C.R. Anderson. And so you have this funny dichotomy of a public school teacher against a homeschool graduate. And sometimes it seems like I'm more the adult in the room, but I digress. So there's kind of my thoughts on school choice. I would love to see charter schools be better developed. We just recently passed laws allowing for charter schools. We're decades behind other states on getting laws in place to allow that. And what you've seen in other states that have further developed their charter schools is then the public schools have to rise to the bar to meet them because it provides a sense of competition. So in, for example, Colorado got some pretty strong charter schools in place. And in order for the public schools to compete with that, they started to become more focused schools or specialized schools. So you would have a school that is more focused on or has a special emphasis on arts and music, and another one that might be more STEM focused. And so it just continues to provide greater options and greater freedom for parents to choose what education will work best for their child and for their family. You know, and a lot of times when I talk about education, it's going to center around homeschool and homeschool rights and individual liberty, because that's the way I was raised, and I really treasure that. And so my goal is to maintain that freedom, so that way, again, we can pass it on to the next generation. And I'm not even talking my generation, I'm talking generations after me, so that this freedom can continue. Any other questions? You got one?
I do.
You have a question, or are you coming to speak? All right. Well, I'll wrap it up real quick then. You know, we have less than 70 days until the general election. It is getting tight. And so now is really the last big chance that we have as candidates to be able to do things like fundraising, because now we move into the time of having no time. We're all going to be out door knocking, you know, getting as much contact with voters as we can, and utilizing the money that we raised previously in our race. So I would just urge you, if you haven't already, make sure that you use this opportunity to talk to some of the candidates, talk to them about what their current needs with their race are. Most of us have little envelopes like this for fundraising. Drop a few bucks in them, little information, easy as that. And we've got yard signs, all sorts of things. So definitely follow up with the candidates here, myself included. We would love to talk to you, and if you have any specific policy concerns, absolutely reach out. This is the time. Thank you.
In your district?
House District 80. I guess I should give the geographic location of it, just for, you know, sometimes the numbers get mixed up. My district starts at Carroll College and then goes about west till Spring Meadow State Park. It goes a few blocks south of Euclid as well, but then it goes up north till Sierra Road. So it's actually pretty small geographically. Again, if you've got any other questions, come track me down. All right, Clinton.
Hello everyone, I'm Clinton McKay. I'm running for HD82, and I'll just introduce myself. I grew up in Missoula, Montana, and I went to the University of Montana there, so I am native Montana, born in Missoula. Studied software engineering, and when I graduated in 2014, I came to Helena to work for SoFi for about 3.5 years, and then I found another job and went to San Francisco, and I can tell you, I got radicalized, I'd say, at that point when I went there. You know, it's a city that, yes, it has many great things to see, beautiful architecture, but you can see the rot of mismanagement and corruption literally on the streets, and you can say the political BS on the streets. I mean, they literally have a poo map, so, and they're not even ashamed of it. I remember they had like a huge jumpy thing. What do you call those things that kids jump? A bouncy house, like a literal poo bouncy house. Is like, this is not to be proud of. So, you know, COVID hits, and it was a blessing in disguise. And I came back to Montana, and I'm here now, and I don't ever want to go back to that place. Just, and I was thinking during that time, it's like, how do you, what's a good way to stop these things, you know, this ideology? And it's, well, ideally, it's the, you could say politics is downstream of popular culture, and, well, Larry eyes. So the idea is, I guess, we got to become the popular culture and affect those politics upstream, and hopefully change things, not hopefully, but change things for the best and get this corruption out of the system. So here I am, you know, not a really, I wouldn't say being outgoing is my natural state in life, so I don't have to get out of my shell, like Katie said over there. And it's a difficult thing. I mean, being a software engineer, I'm a little bit scatterbrained, but it's like, well, what do I do? What do I know? I gather requirements from people, my stakeholders, and it's like, okay, this isn't as distant from my job as what I was doing before. There's problems to solve. I want to lower taxes. I want to, you know, let's see, there's some digital things I want to push through, such as, you know, remove the dishonesty, right? When you're, for example, you're buying a movie or quotes online when it's actually just a lease from the company. it should be illegal for them to tell you that you're buying a movie. It should be a lifetime lease, or if you're buying it, it should be DRM free, and you should be able to own it yourself. And then, the second one is obviously taxes. Everybody's been talking about it. And then there's Defend the Guard, which, again, consult people who I know on that stuff and see if I can get that through. And then, as always, our Second Amendment rights. But to go on to that topic, what I want to do is, since I'm running for HD82, my idea is, well, I have my constituents. If they elect me, then what I need to do is I need to just treat them as my stakeholders. I need to gather requirements from them and build out a solution that they need in the government. A little bit similar to software, except I won't be programming as much. Maybe I'll be able to drive the Democrats crazy as a programming exercise. It's fascinating because for example, I went to the Northwestern Energy Speak yesterday, and it's just like, you hear things and you're juggling in your mind. It's like, well, for example, property taxes. The Constitution only allows you to have two sources of property tax. Not property tax, it's just taxes and, income sources for taxes. Meaning income or property. That's the only two we can have at the moment. We cannot add in, for example, sales tax without swapping out the other one, which is complicated. So how do you do that? And I'm sitting there, I'm sitting down, thinking here also. It's just like, well, what do you do? Is this like Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark? Do you gotta swap it out at the same time, and hopefully the boulder won't come down and crush everybody and really mess things up? You take examples such as what was the CEO of Northwestern? He was mentioning how our transmission line taxes on the property they're on is above or around 6% and above. It's ridiculous. Electrical prices are already expensive. We're worried about data centers coming in making things more expensive. At a minimum, we can figure out, okay, how do we reduce those costs from being pushed onto the user? Maybe we need to figure out how to lower property taxes in that instance, or figure out how we can lower it and also lower it for all the businesses associated with it at the same time. Get multiple goals completed with one shot. Things like that. So it's definitely a complicated thing, which luckily I'm surrounded by smart people, and if I win, I have a team of people I can consult to, people I trust, that I can talk to. I can go out and I can talk to my constituents and see what they think about these things. What are higher priority things to transfer in terms of taxes, as an example. School taxes, which are purely on property taxes. Correct me if I'm wrong, but levies, through levies, yes. What is it possible first to maybe, for example, a low barrier entry is to swap out income taxes with sales tax, and then transfer the school system over to the sales tax, their levies to that, and maybe then at least it gets rid of a lot of the, for example, the pushback that we may experience if we try to lower property taxes. Because then if the school system is on the sales tax, then maybe it's easier to move the property taxes and get rid of those slowly now that there's no longer any pressure on them as much, as an example. And these are things that go through my mind. Might be a curse of being an engineer at that point. But I think that, I can't. My end goal is to win and see what I can do to help make things better for our community and reduce the strain, really, on our local Montanans that just can't afford things anymore because of the way things are going right now. And it should be the job of the government in that sense to represent the people and do what they need. They need to serve their constituents. It was great talking with you all. Probably close out. Well, thanks for everybody for coming tonight. We had a great turnout. Hope.
There's still food to eat.
Oh yeah, there's still a lot of food here, so you guys should grab as much as you can eat. If you're growing up from a working class family, my dad always told me, if you go to the buffet, you eat as much as possible because you paid a fixed price, so you don't let that food go to waste. You shouldn't be able to walk out. You should be crawling to your car and worried about diabetes tomorrow. So, thanks for all coming tonight. I look forward to any future events with everybody around here and additional members on the live stream. Thanks for all coming.
I'm just going to take a little bit of time, probably 30 seconds. If you want to get up here in the booth and have a conversation with your candidate, don't be scared. It gets our message out there. Get up here and talk to your candidate and have a conversation and ask them the questions that you didn't want to ask out here in front of everybody. Ask them in front of thousands of people live on YouTube and Facebook. Come up and sit down with your candidate. It's better lighting in the studio anyways. So get up here, talk to your candidates.
I forgot that I don't want to talk.